Welcome, fans, to another episode of Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I am Dan Edwards, your host. I'm here to provide you the inside scoop with living, working, and playing across the greater Seattle area, including the Eastside. It is Wednesday, May 8th, 2024, and we're coming to you live on Facebook and YouTube. And feel free to chime in with any of your questions or comments. We should be able to see those in real time. If you're listening to a recorded version, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. You can find our podcasts on Spotify. You can find them on Apple Podcasts and any other streaming location. We're live on YouTube and on Facebook. So we would love your comments, subscriptions, and reviews. Sharing is caring, as you know. Real estate fans, we have a exciting show today. We're going to start off our Real Talk segment talking about some of the affordable housing efforts in Seattle and Washington State. In the mortgage moment, we're going to have a conversation with Tucker about the financing of some of these options, and we're going to use a term called ADU, which is an additional dwelling unit, financing them, building them, and also we're having our good friend Jeremy Morgado with Re-Up West Coast to discuss how to prepare your home to sell for maximum value with no upfront money out of your pocket. Should be a pretty good show. I look forward to it. So let's jump right into our Real Talk segment after this short little bumper, right? All right, excellent. So today our conversation about affordable housing efforts, and I thought I would kind of dig deeper into some of the things that have been happening in Washington State and specifically in Seattle, Everett, Eastside, Issaquah. Is back in 2023, the Washington legislature passed a pretty comprehensive removal of many zoning restrictions. And in 2019 is actually when Seattle got busy at doing this to kind of come up with ways to have more affordable housing. But even before that, Washington formed the Washington Housing Finance Commission. And actually, I think I'm going to bring Tucker. Tucker, are you around? I'm going to bring you on for this because you know a bit about the Washington Housing Finance Commission and some of the down payment assistance programs. And this is one way to help increase affordability, because one of the biggest barriers to people getting started in real estate or into their first home is that financing. So that's actually been going on for probably more than 20 years. Is that right? The Washington State Housing Finance Commission?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's probably the most generous down payment assistance program offered across the country.
Yeah, and kind of break down how that works specifically for a borrower.
Yeah, so within Washington State Housing Finance Commission, they offer many different programs, but essentially they cover your full need of borrower contribution for a loan. So the down payment requirement, which on a conventional loan is 3% or FHA is a 3.5%. And what Washington State Housing Finance Commission does is they grant that money to a home buyer with a no interest little mini loan that doesn't require payments and is not paid off until you sell or refinance the home in the future. So it's a great way to lock in today's housing price, get in, and get those down payment dollars at no interest.
Right. Now, is there a cap on how much that down payment, like money cap on how much that can be?
So there's multiple different programs. They're 3, 4, or 5% of the purchase price. So the maximum with that program would be 5% of the given purchase price.
So 5%, but like when I say maximum, I mean 50,000, 100,000. Does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. It depends on which program. Some of them are capped at 15,000, but there are other programs within Washington State Housing that are not capped. So they go up to the conventional high balance loan limit. 977 200, and then 5% of that. So do some quick math here. 977 times 5%, probably just under 50 grand.
So under 50 grand. So essentially, in order to make housing affordable, you're sitting there, you're making a rent payment, and maybe it's at 3,500 a month is your rent payment. Well, the equivalency in today's rates is probably about a $600,000 home, right? So you're not necessarily going to qualify for a $600,000 home, but if you didn't save up a down payment and maybe you do qualify between 750 and 850, well, down payment assistance program would allow you to cover that down payment there's going to be some money out of pocket, right?
Yeah, so typically there's a closing cost left over. So unless you negotiate in for those to be paid by the sellers, then that is a buyer responsibility. So I always tell people, 1 to 3% of the sales price is really all we need from a buyer. But I've had two success stories already this year where we were able to get buyers into homes with almost nothing out of pocket. They do have to pay for an inspection, so $300 to $500 there, and then whatever amount of closing costs are their responsibility.
Oh, that's great. Okay, perfect. So down payment assistance is really a program in Washington State that really helps make housing affordable, because that idea of having to pay that. Now, do they have to make payments on that down payment assistance as they go?
They don't. No, it sits silently in second position on title, and they don't pay it off until they sell or refinance the property in the future.
Right. So seller refinance. So there's no loan payment. It's not added to your loan payment, paying that extra $60,000. It's actually a pretty excellent way to get in. And I have a success story. One of my clients, four, four years ago, maybe more, bought a house in Everett with down payment assistance. He was cash rich but savings poor, you know. So he went in, bought a nice house in Everett for about 300,000 at the time. And 2 years later, so it must have been more than 4 years, let's say 6. 2 years later, sold that home with the equity, paid off the balance, took the down payment that he had, the equity that he had, went, bought another home. And then 2 years later, sold that home and bought another one. So now he's in the home that he really, really wants to. The home in Everett wasn't the one he wanted to, but he, in 6 years, progressively put himself in a situation where now he's in the home he wants. And I think sometimes people are very, how do I put this politely, short-sighted, where they look at it from a standpoint of what they can get now, and it's just not enough. I get it. There isn't a lot of great stuff out there for the price. But when you look at it on the long play, even 6 years, he ends up with a really nice house that he really does like, and he had all the down payment that came from basically growth and equity. So
Right.
all right, so that's one way that Seattle is working on the efforts to increase affordable housing. Now, another way is in new construction, but unfortunately, that is falling woefully short, because the idea is you increase supply and you're going to reduce demand. But basically, I'm looking at a statistic here. Statistic is by CoStar, talking about construction starts in 2023, and they're well below historic average. I don't have that chart for you because it's not queued up, but let me just say that the last time we actually had the builder confidence and the money for building to be where it needed to be in order to keep up with immigration, and that means, it doesn't mean, it just means people moving to this area, that type of immigration, in order to keep up with it. The last time we had that kind of momentum was 2006. Since then, one of those two things has not come together. One, the money, meaning builders don't have confidence in the consumer, so they're just not going to build because they can't afford to make the earnings that they want to make. And then the other is the market. And really, we'll talk briefly about the GMA, the Growth Management Act in Washington State. This is a state law that constricts building. And, the idea behind the GMA is to restrict building and keep it dense, so that we can protect our wild spaces here in Washington State. I think that there should be a conversation on expanding that in order to provide more affordable housing. Like, look at it from an affordable housing standpoint, because I do believe we can do that. So what's really keeping new construction is actually the cost of money keeps these builders from building a lot. They're keeping it at a rate where they can actually make good money versus no money. And that's just the economy of the Seattle area. So I won't get too deep into that. But what I did want to finish off within this Real Talk segment is kind of the movement towards what we call Dadus and ADUs. Dadus ADUs is kind of how it's said. So if you hear that term out there, Tucker's going to talk about financing these, but I thought I would just go ahead and define what they are. And let me see if I can present. Screen share. This one. So Seattle really kind of blazed the trail with this website. It's called ADU Universe, and essentially what they have done is they've streamlined the process, and it is no longer a full plat in order to build on the back of your property. what we call an accessory dwelling unit. And I'll just actually go to some designs to show you what we mean by accessory dwelling unit. So this property right here is a 2-bedroom, 1,000 square foot, detached ADU. And so this is an example of a pre-approved DADU plan. So it can be no bigger than 1,000 square feet. It connects up to the water and sewer on the property. It connects up to the water, sewer, electricity. There are other simple building things, but essentially what they've done is they've created a list of pre-approved floor plans, and there's other sites that have even more DADUs. And then this website, it's if you just Google ADU Universe, you'll find the step-by-step guide, but it is actually fairly simple. There are some restrictions where you locate it, but you can see this picture right here of a house there, and then this brand new one. So what you'll see is if you're out there looking for a home and you start to find homes that are 1,000 square foot, that's exactly what these are. There's some information about, they are considered condos in many cases now. What they do is they take a property and they condoize it. So to be specific, a condo is a common interest in a piece of property that all the property owners kind of own their airspace. That's a way to put it. So you own the airspace, but the common areas is the property. So in these cases, there may be homeowners, they may be homeowners dues, but really it is a way to create density without subdivisions, right? Without dividing the property physically. And essentially the process, I think, let me see here, there was a great, there was like a really, I think it's here. Yeah, it's where do I start? Step-by-step guide, pre-approval, can I build? So interactive, you can search your lot, you can take a look at all those things. And essentially what's happening is that's creating more density. It's creating more households that are actually affordable. Although the ones that I saw in Seattle were 750. That was in West Seattle. And I think in downtown Seattle, they're probably closer to 850 to $1 million. But here it is, browse the gallery, pick a pre-approved one, select the design, prepare a site plan, and then get a permit. I talked with the city planners in both Issaquah and the city planners in both Everett. These are two areas that I'm kind of talking to about this situation. Everett has already adopted the more dense floor plans, or excuse me, more of the density, whereas Issaquah is still working on it. So according to state law, July of 2024 is when all of these municipalities have to comply with these restrictions. So the best way to do this is if you're interested in knowing can your property qualify, is one, you can just call the city. But if you don't know the questions to ask, reach out to us and we'll be happy to get to the details, because I've already got a list of kind of the specific questions to ask in order to help you to streamline the process. So now we're going to take a short commercial break, but then we'll talk with Tucker about how to get the money to build these DADUs. So come back after this short commercial break.